Welcome back to the Deep Dive series, where each episode we take a look at a different NFL team and we come up with a realistic outcome and projection for them in the 2022 NFL draft season. I don't do each episode based on power rankings. It's based on where they would fall in the draft order, because at the end of this, we're doing a 2023 NFL mock draft. Yes. And that's kind of the case for today's team, the Chicago Bears, because teams that I ended up having the same record, like the Lions, the Washington Commanders, I think are probably in a better place than the Bears. But we'll get to talking about the Bears because there's a lot to be positive about. But what's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know. So let's go ahead, do the nitty-gritty, and get into things as we look at the roster, starting with the offense. It is coached by Matt Eberflus. The OC will be Luke Getsy, formerly from Green Bay, right? Yeah, Green Bay. Anyway, I'm not gonna lie, dude. I don't know too much about Getsy, aside from that he's worked with the Packers for a bulk of his career. He was a quarterbacks coach and a passing game coordinator under Matt LaFleur. So I think it's pretty safe to say that he's probably gonna mirror most of the Shanahan coaching tree type of offense. He's going to be deploying this outside zone, this wide zone blocking scheme with lots of motions, RPOs, play action. The real question for me is, will it maybe mimic something similar to like an Arthur Smith, who likes to deploy that 12 personnel close to 50% of the time? He incorporates inside and split zone runs with the occasional duos. We'll see if he tries to put his own little stank on this offense. But Getsy, he does bring in players that he was familiar with back in Green Bay in the form of Lucas Patrick and EQ St. Brown. I always butcher these names, man. I really do. I spent a good minute listening to how you say it. I think it's Quamius? Nah, it's EQ today. It's EQ St. Brown. It's a hallmark of the channel. I'm just really bad at pronouncing names, but he brings those guys over from Green Bay. It looks like they're probably going to have very vital roles this season. And I actually like this system a lot for Justin Fields. I'm a big Justin Fields mark. I think he was my quarterback 2 in the 2021 NFL draft, if I'm not mistaken. But I think this scheme's going to use a lot of play action. We're going to see a lot of boots, a lot of rollouts, and they're going to make use of his mobility. I'm very encouraged by, at least schematically, what they're doing with the offense. I just tend to disagree with how lackluster their approach was in terms of getting help and getting weapons for Justin Fields. And I guess we could start with the receivers. They bring in EQ, and he's fine. He's like a fine depth piece. He's a good wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3 if you really need him. But like, he's going to come in here and try to be the wide receiver 2 with Darnell Mooney. Because Brian Pringle, I think last year, like 60% of his snaps, over 60% of his snaps came in the slot. I just assume he's going to be playing in the slot this year. They do bring in Velus Jones, but the dude was like 25. He's probably going to just play his rookie deal and that's it. They'll probably move on from him. Like, he's a good vertical threat, very fast, good return abilities, but I don't really see him being a big threat. I think that he's kind of a reach in the 3rd round. They do have Daz Newsome there also in the slot. It'll be interesting to see if he actually makes the roster, because they also brought in some other vets in the form of Dante Pettis, a guy that's just really trying to catch back on after just being kind of a day 2 bust for the 49ers. And then Tajay Sharp, who comes over from Atlanta, formerly of Tennessee. I think he spent time in Minnesota. So really just a journeyman type of guy. I like actually David Moore, like low-key outside shot to make this squad. He's just very similar to, I think, EQ at this point in their careers, that they're just very good depth options. It gives you more variety, more spice at receiver. It's just, you look at that and like Darnell Mooney, man, he's good, but like, I feel like he's a very good wide receiver too, that they need something else there. They just don't have it. I know Cole Kmet, he's going to be like, they got him involved last year, but in particular, this offense is really going to try to get him involved. So, because they expect a lot, like with these Shanahan systems, they expect a lot from the tight ends and the running backs. Like often the hot read, like the hot read, the second read in the passing game is typically the tight end or the running back, H-back, whoever, if you will. Because they do bring in Kari Blasingame, or who's from Tennessee. He's going to make the roster because he's a fullback. It's the system. They like their athletic fullbacks, and he's kind of that. So they like bringing these guys as kind of like the under in like like if you're having a high-low option, they like him as the guy going out to the flats. So yeah, I think Cole Kmet's going to be very viable in this offense. They actually have two pretty good tight end twos technically. I think Ryan Griffin and James O'Shaughnessy are very capable tight end twos. We're looking for another guy to like a fourth tight end. I think Chase Allen. He just has that like tight end two build, So not that he was like outstanding at Iowa State, but like I think he can make it. In terms of the passing game, who do they have that'll make plays in the passing game? Because it's like David Montgomery is not like your ideal passing back. Like he does swings and screens very well. You could probably say a bit of the same about Khalil Herbert, who's a very good, I think he's going to see a lot of snaps this year. Like David Montgomery, big fan of his, but I feel like Khalil Herbert is going to be a big reason why David Montgomery won't be staying after his rookie contract. They bring in Darrington Evans, who's really more of a track star than an actual running back. Just gives him more speed at running back. Tristan Ebner, though, this is a cat to watch out for, at least in terms of the return game, but I think he's very capable both in the passing game and as a runner, more so the passing game. He's best known for back at Baylor. I was actually surprised he even got drafted. I had him as a UDFA just because he really only had one really good game, and it was against Texas State. Like literally half of his forced missed tackles on the season came in that one game. It was kind of ludicrous. So how do I feel about the weapons? I don't feel great, but I think they can maybe make it work. It'll definitely be interesting. In terms of the offensive line, this one's gonna be. Ooh, there's gonna be questions because right now you got, again, OTAs kind of take it with a grain of salt. Even Eberflus has come out and been like, "Hey, I'm working with just different combinations of players and seeing how guys work together." So Tevin Jenkins worked out with like the second team like for a majority of the week, so like I'm not too worried about that. I still think he comes in and starts at right tackle. They had Larry Borum, I think, working out with the first team at right tackle, but he's probably going to be playing left. They had Braxton Jones working out with the first team left tackles, but this is a guy, like, he's got a great build, like 36-inch arms, great length, just definitely needs a little fine tuning. So he's more of a developmental guy, really, at this point. So I think they go with Borum and Jenkins there. And, like, Borum had a pretty solid rookie year. Question is Jenkins, man. How will he look next year? So going to the interior, Cody Whitehead, he lost 10 pounds, looking great. I think he's probably the most sure thing on this offensive line. And then I really think they're going to have Lucas Patrick. They list him here too, Lucas Patrick there at center, because they were working Sam Mustapher out at right guard. Looks like he's going to be like the first team right guard, second team center, because like center just hasn't, like, he hasn't really worked out at center like last two seasons. So moving to right guard, we'll see. I think that's like, this is like, if we're gonna sign you to another deal, like another contract, you got to work out at guard, man. You just got to, because you ain't happening at center. You can't be Mason Cole at center, bro. But Lucas Patrick actually has a lot of versatility. He can play really all over the offensive line. I think they have a lot of interesting young depth that they're going to be developing on the offensive line. But if injuries were to occur, huge question marks to how will this team do. Because, I mean, you got Jatir Carter out of Southern University. Like, that cat is exceptionally raw. Like, good upside, but exceptionally raw. You really don't want to see him starting. Soon, you got Doug Kramer, who I really think he's probably a high-end backup, maybe at best. At the center position, he's a bit of a lunger. But yeah, they take him in the 6th. They take Zachary Thomas, who I wasn't too high on at San Diego State. They take him in the 6th. Like, you got a ton of young talent. You can't have these guys start. Like, if injuries were to occur, like, you just don't want to see that. Julian Davenport should never start. I don't know how the dude's still on an NFL roster. Like, it's not great. But I think the biggest question coming into this season for the offensive line is, how will Tevin Jenkins look in year 2 after year 1 was kind of a wash? And Sam Mustipher, can you look better at right guard? Because they need you to. But I feel good about Lucas Patrick. Like, I think he's an average starter. Cody Whitehair's above average starter. Borum, there's a lot to be encouraged about. So the offense, is it going to be wonderful? Like, probably not. It's going to be capable, though. I think it's going to be capable. They got a good rushing attack with David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, a guy who could literally take it to the house at any given moment. You can say the same thing about Darrington Evans. And David Montgomery, man, he's just a solid back that the dude fights and fights and fights. Like very underrated, very good force miss tackler, eats contact. So I actually like the combination of him, Khalil Mack, having a little bit of sprinkle in there with Evans and Ebner. I didn't mention DeMontre Tuggle, who you barely see over here. I was actually a big fan of his going to the draft. I think I had him as probably a UDFA, but at Ohio, I really like the cat a lot. Dude's definitely a smaller back who has a bit of upside as in the passing game. Just really didn't flash that at Ohio because he just wasn't utilized in that manner. But I just don't feel good about this team's playmakers. Like, outside of Mooney and honestly Cole Kmet, like St. Brown and Pringle, they're kind of like, oh yeah, they're fine. Like, it's not great. I really wish they went out and made more of a impact with playmakers. Like, listen, grabbing Velus Jones in the 3rd. Come on, get your boy more help. Like, this was something the old regime did a lot of when it came to Mitch Trubisky, that they would address their weaknesses, like, on offense, like, on day 3 and come on, you can't be doing that. Like, go out and get some help. Like, they got lucky that Mooney, who was a 5th rounder, worked out, but get your quarterback some help. So we'll see this season. Maybe they go out, do it next off season. Like, I still think this team, like, again, I got them finishing. You kind of already assume with similar records to the Lions and Washington, which those are teams that are well under 500, or at least for me and my predictions. So let's go ahead and take a look at the defense with Alan Williams. If you're not familiar with Alan Williams, he's a guy that worked as the DB's coach in Indianapolis under Matt Eberflus. So they're going to be very like-minded with how this defense rolls. Honestly, it does not surprise me that their first 2 draft picks were defensive backs, considering their DC's a former defensive back coach. But they grabbed 2 really good players in Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon, who has upside to him. Brisker, I think, is a bit more of a sure thing. He is literally, like, I think my comp for him was Adrian Amos, which Eddie Jackson has been missing Adrian Amos for so long. But When it comes to what they're going to be running, it's going to be your standard 4-3 defense. It's going to be very zone heavy. During Eberflus's first couple of seasons in Indianapolis, he ran a pretty vanilla cover 2 because of the youth and the inexperience in the secondary. And after that, that's when he started running, or at least incorporating more like cover 3, like cover 3 match buzz, and basically invert cover 2. So I don't know, how good will he feel about really opening up the playbook, getting a little bit more to his I guess you would say his more complex defensive plays. We'll see. I mean, with Jalen Johnson, you got to feel good about that. You got to feel good about what they saw last year. I guess we start with secondary here, but what they saw last year, Thomas Graham Jr. on the outside, and right now sounds like he's firmly in the nickel, that he's going to be their first team. He's been running with the first teams in the slot, and we know like Eberflus, he's like, yo, I have one of the best slots in the game in Kenny Moore back in Indianapolis, and I'm looking for that guy. They also bring in Taven Young, who I listed as the starter because I did this before OTAs, and I'm very happy to see that they moved Thomas Graham into the slot. I thought that's where he should have been in the first place after coming out of Oregon, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see who gets that slot position. I think both those guys are very good. Just with Taven Young, it's been injuries that really hampered his career. And then on the outside, you got Jalen Johnson. You got Kyler Gordon. Kyler Gordon didn't participate on the last day of OTAs, but the dude's got upside. Very good athlete. Worked in a bevy of different defenses there at Washington. But I think he is definitely going to be most familiar with what they run here in Chicago under Eberflus. I think that's why Eberflus went out and was like, hey, let's get us this Washington cat. I'm sure he would have loved if Trent McDuffie was still around, but hey, he'll take Kyler Gordon. Brisker, Eddie Jackson, that's a phenomenal second safety duo. In terms of depth there, Kendall Vildor, good depth option. Glad you're not starting, basically. They do bring in Tennessee's Dane Cruikshank. I butcher names, but he's been a solid rotation guy there for Tennessee. They bring him over here as very good depth. They got Duke Shelley. That's kind of like whatever. Really, like at least Thomas Graham, like, okay, he played well last year on the outside, at least at the tail end of last year. So, like, hey, if we have injuries, he's a guy that we could play on the outside. Hopefully Taven Young's not hurt. So, there's possibilities there. I don't feel like they got what? They got Jalen Jones out of Ole Miss, who is fine, but, like, they got Ollie Green out of Missouri. He was one of my least favorite corners. But like, I feel good about at least the starters. I feel good about Jalen Johnson. Obviously, he was one of my favorites coming out of the 2020 draft. Jaquan Brisker, Eddie Jackson. Yeah, I feel good about that secondary. And obviously, you don't take it, like when you're doing predictions, you don't really try to take it into account for injuries. Unless, of course, you have someone like Tavon Young, who has been just littered with them. There's not much to talk about with the linebackers, if I'm going to be honest. Like, outside of Raekwon Smith, who's easily like a top 5, top 10 linebacker in the NFL, they bring in a solid vet, really a replacement level starter in Nicholas Marrow. But outside of that, you're not talking about any of these guys. Like, the only guy I really want to talk about would probably be their UDFA, Jack Sanborn, who I was surprised he didn't get drafted, but he's just a solid linebacker. Like, but still not a guy I probably want to start. But yeah, like, there's really nothing to speak of here. It might be probably their weakest position group, if we're going to be honest. So let's go ahead to talk about the defensive line, because actually this is where Eberflus brings in another guy that a guy he was familiar with in Indianapolis, and Al-Quandin Muhammad. There we go. I tried it. I don't think he was present for OTAs. He just didn't participate. But yeah, I think he's actually a solid run stuffer at the edge. Okay as a pass rusher. If anything, your pass rushers are going to be Robert Quinn. It's going to be Travis Gibson. I think we'll see Muhammad on early downs. Gibson comes in on more passing downs, because Duch is very effective in that role, in my opinion. But Robert Quinn, man, I hope they don't trade him. I really do, because honestly, that's a huge blow to the defense. Huge blow to the defense. Like, where are you going to get your pass rush? Travis Gibson. It's like, okay, that's fine, but like, you could have Robert Quinn and Travis Gibson on the outside, because like, outside of that, who do you have? You have Dominique Robinson, who's a former wide receiver turned edge, who, yeah, a lot of upside, but still probably a guy you don't want to see hit the field immediately. Then you got a couple of these like tweeners, and like Charles Snowden, who was Virginia a year ago. Carson Taylor, who was, I believe, Northern Arizona. Just another these guys that are just they're thin, undersized edge rushers. So it's like, no, you don't want those guys seeing the field early. So yeah, nah, man. I hope they can work out whatever they got going on with Robert Quinn. On the interior, they have guys. I'll say that. Like Justin Jones was a very good pickup, in my opinion. He was very solid for the Chargers. They got Angelo Blackson, who I think he's going to be an early down, again, another run defender type. And they'll probably bring in Mario Edwards, who's more of this pass rusher on the interior. They also got a very good rotation piece in Mike Pennell. I actually really like that. They have the former BYU nose tackle there. I'll be surprised if he really sees the field much this year. I didn't think there was anything exceptional about his rookie season last year, but I feel good about, as it stands now, I feel good about this this defensive line, especially with Gibson. You got Quinn, you got Muhammad as really your more your running down guy. And kind of like likewise on the interior. I'm not a big fan of Blackson, but like Justin Jones, Mike Pennell, Mario Edwards, they list him here on the outside. The dude's he makes his money on the interior. Like, I feel really good about that. Like, this defense, I feel exceptionally good about. I think the pass rush is solid. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like a top 10 pass rush. It's going to be more middle of the field, but it's still a good pass rush. I feel good about the secondary. I'm very encouraged, especially what you saw last year in Thomas Graham. Kyler Gordon, he's got a lot of upside, but you know what you got in Jalen Johnson. And then your safety duo is just really solid. They got some good. I didn't even mention DeAndre Houston Carson, more of a special teamer, but another guy who's just been solid when called upon. So like, I feel good about this defense, real good. And this is probably why I felt that this team will, at least they have a good chance at least replicating what they did last year at 6-11. I think there's a good chance that they do that, if not be a little bit better. Let's go ahead and get to our starters. I do this based on who I think is going to see the most snaps and not necessarily your base formations. So let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty with that. Justin Fields, David Montgomery, but we will see a healthy dose of Khalil Herbert, Darnell Mooney, and then I got EQ St. Brown, and then Byron Pringle. And I kind of mentioned Byron Pringle was a guy that kind of already, he coming from Kansas City, he saw a large majority of his snaps there in at the slot. Cole Kmet at tight end, Larry Borum, Cody Whitehead, got Lucas Patrick, Sam Mustipher, and Tevin Jenkins. Looking at the defense, Robert Quinn, I got Muhammad there. Again, I think he's just going to see more snaps simply because He's going to be more of this early down run defender. And I think Gibson, he's going to be up there in snaps. Don't get me wrong. Gibson's going to be up there. Then I got, again, Blackson kind of for the same reason as Muhammad, because he's going to be on the field most of the time because he's a run defender guy. Justin Jones, then I got Smith, Morrow, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Trevon Young. I really want to go back and put Thomas Graham here instead, but I don't know. I think both are going to see a healthy amount of snaps as long as Young could stay healthy. Then I got Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker. Let's go ahead, take a look at how I think the Bears do as I got them finishing 6-11. I kind of spoiled it at the beginning when I said they had the same records as teams like the Commanders and the Lions. And I feel better about the Lions, at least especially what they got going on defense. Actually, especially what they got going at wide receiver. On the offensive line, that's such a good situation that they got for whoever will eventually be their rookie quarterback. In defense, I would say the Bears probably are a bit further along, but they don't nearly have. It's kind of tough because the depth for the Lions, a lot of it is young guys. You're like, oh man, I wonder if this guy takes the next step. Like that's what their depth is. Opposed to the Bears, who they got a bunch of guys that are really just role players, you know. So I think it's comparable, but I had this team finishing 3-3 in the division. I guess we could go ahead and take a look at this. I got them winning the opener against the Niners. That's probably the biggest shocker for everybody. That one was a tough one for me because at least for the Niners. Who's going to be their quarterback? Jimmy G, Trey Lance. I don't know. We'll talk about the Niners here soon enough, as you're going to find out. Apparently, I'm not that high on the Niners this season, though I don't feel like I'm down on them either. They're kind of always an interesting team to project. But I got them losing to the Packers. Got the Texans beating them, so maybe that makes up for the Niners. The Niners win. Got them beating the Giants. Got Vikings winning at home. Got the Patriots winning. I got them beating the Commanders. I'm sorry, man. I must be. You know what it is? For me, when it came to Washington, I'm really down on their play calling. I think they're very predictable. I'm not a big fan of either coordinator. I think that's what happened when it came to Washington. And I think I mentioned this in my Washington deep dive that I'm just not a fan of what Scott Turner and Jack Del Rio, like they're not very adaptable. Though you could say Scott Turner is a bit more so than Jack Del Rio, but they've become real predictable. So I don't know. We'll see. I think that's why I was really down on Washington. I got them losing to Dallas, losing to New England, losing to my Dolphins. Fins up, baby. Fins up. I got them winning against Detroit at home. I got the Falcons beating them. Got the Jets beating them. Packers. I have them beating the Packers. Or I have the Packers because the Packers have been the Bears' daddy for like years now. So sorry, not sorry. But yeah, like overall, like I have this team slated at 6-11. I got them doing the same as last year. 5-3 against losing teams, 1-8 against winning teams. Well. But I don't know. You'll let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's it for the video. Be here tomorrow when we talk about another team that I think people are going to be surprised that wasn't lower on my list. But until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.